Hello, hello. Alrighty, for this evening, what I'm going to be doing is going through and doing some polish on this painting. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic off just so that you can kind of sit back and watch. Actually, scratch that. Let's leave it on. I'm going to talk you through what I'm thinking on this painting as I get into the detailing and the final looks for this first one here. All right. So what I'm doing right now is something a little tricky, right? You might think, oh my gosh, we got to paint everything within this class. Yeah, for the most part, you do. But there are definitely some exceptions to that where, there's some things that I could go in and I could, detail it with my brush. Whenever I start to feel myself getting into like stippling territory, meaning that I am just sitting there for hours on end, doing little tiny dots. Imagine like trying to paint every star in the sky. It becomes a little bit much. And at my age, I don't really like to do that anymore. So I'm taking a little bit of a sidestep here and dropping in a moss texture that I found online. There's a few different things that I'm doing with this moss texture that I can point out to you guys. So I'm up to 117 textures within my file right now. But what I'm doing here is I've got it bigger, it gets medium here, it becomes even smaller, and then even it's kind of smaller over in this region. But what I want to do is essentially take this moss texture and start using it throughout my piece. I'm going to end up deleting out these Tetris looking pieces and erasing around them. So I'm kind of creating a subtractive method here with the way that I'm working, just to be able to get some more granule texture within my piece that I feel like it's kind of lacking right now. My stone looks good, but it's pretty smooth overall. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to collapse down all of these layers. So I'm just holding shift, so clicking on my top one, left clicking, holding down shift, and then clicking on my bottom layer. Then I'm going to hit Control E to be able to merge my layers together. This is a great technique for you guys. And now we've got all those little layers together. Again, Control E just to be able to get them all on one layer. From this point, I'm going to go in and start just deleting this stuff out. So I want to see what else I can do with it. Maybe I can bend it a little bit. Let's try that for a second, see what happens. So if I put a warp on here and let's go to 5 by 5 on the grid, that'll allow me to be able to start bending this texture just a little bit more so that I can move it and warp it. 5 by 5 is a lot. Let's go 4 by 4. Yeah, 4 by 4. That's a little bit easier for me to work with, but this will allow me to just be able to get some variation and some natural kind of shape forms where it's getting thicker and thinner in accordance with what's going on in my actual drawing. That's sort of what I want. So I'm not going to be spending too much time doing that. I just want it to bend and warp just a little bit in certain areas, not being hyper fixated on this. It's just a little bit of movement, and that should get me through. So the next thing that I want to do is another little advanced technique here that I've learned recently, where you can take any brush and let's use Kyle's Ultimate Pastel Palooza. No, this one will work well. I was doing this earlier today with my with this ice texture that I was building up inside of Maya and in Photoshop to be able to do some digital painting. And so I've got one of uh, one of the specialty brushes that I'm using, and I'm going to edit that specialty brush. And this isn't something that you do too often, but I'm going to, under where I select my brushes over here in the top bar, over to the right where it says mode, I can change the mode from normal, which is what we almost 99% of the time use, to something called clear. And when we select under the drop down clear, that's going to allow me to turn any brush into an eraser. So all of a sudden, I can use this messy kind of chalky brush. I'm going to turn down the opacity just a little bit more on this so I can see when I'm painting behind and get as much out of this here as I can. I like leaving some of it in that area, but this will allow me to go in and really start I'm at 50%. Let's go up even higher. Dropping down some of these forms, getting rid of some of those hard edges that exist there, so that I'm left with just a little bit of green noise texture that I'm creating. This is working pretty well for me. I'm also going to change the layer interpretation here so that it matches with the coloration of the rest of my piece, or sorry, the rest of the artwork and paint job that I've done so far. Again, now to use the eraser, all I have to really do is use the brush. And I'm just going to go through here and paint this in. You can also set your brush's opacity down to like 50%. That'll give you a different kind of look and result. Let's break it up. I really want this thing. And I've been doing this to be able to create those ice textures now for weeks for my other job with these packages that have to go into a 3D freezer. So I'm kind of just thinking about where got a big gap here. Break it up and just make it so that it's sort of streaking down and just breaking up the texture and some of those big color areas. Now, your illustrations certainly do need breathing space. They need room for the eye to be able to rest. And I think my painting has that right now. But I want to try and get some more of that messiness going on within the painting also. So there's a balance here that I'm looking to strike. I know it sounds a little bit confusing for now, but stick with me. I'm going to go through here and try and get this painted out as quickly as possible as I can for you guys. You notice how much of it I'm taking away and just really making sure that I'm destroying as many of those edges as I can. So it's almost like I'm creating a rust texture across my my elephant. Let's zoom out again just so we can see what the result looks like. And yeah, that's looking pretty good in that section. Trying to create a rhythm here. Leave a little bit of it up in this part. So that's creeping over some of the light areas as well. Becomes ubiquitous throughout the elephant's trunk. And it's going to match the shading. So after I do, this is sort of the polish pass, right? I've got my shading, 90% of the way done. I've given it a good first pass. And now I just want to go in. This is one of the first times you'll see me working more tightly within my composition and really kind of getting down into some of those pixels and thinking about the way that I'm actually applying some of the paint. Up until this point, that's one thing I'd like to recommend to you guys if you're just getting started with digital paint is stay pulled back, man. Don't get too close on these paintings too early on. Make sure that you work the entire composition at one time. What you're going to notice next is that after I do this, if I don't make it like super subtle, then the rocks on the wall face are going to look really detailed as well, or really flat and smooth also. And golly, and then it sort of becomes if you give a mouse a cookie, right? You can spend the next couple of years of your life sitting there painting every leaf in. And that was one of the big things that we do not want to do on this project is we want to be able to quickly give the illusion of detail. And this is a strong way to be able to give the illusion of just a little bit more texture within your piece without spending years. So if I went through and tried to paint all of this, it could take me a long time, and I don't want to do that. What I'm also interested in is getting those browns and the other kind of discoloration that's happening. So working subtractively, could I sit there and paint a square with, some green and brown on it and then copy and paste that square? Sure, I could. Certainly could. So at the end of the day, if you can paint it, um, and there we are. So now it's sort of pulled back. We got more of a mossy color. I'd like to have some more of it within this region. We'll see what else we can do. But let's go into the layer interpretation right now and start messing with that and changing it up. So there it is with a little bit more subtle green within there. I like that we're getting some of those green stains. I want to keep an eye on my navigator as well. Here it is with a deep dark green. That's kind of cool also. But I think we're going to find, ooh, that's sort of nice having it really disappear in a lot of big ways. That one's a little X-ray looking. That looks like glowing slime. We're not trying to create an energy effect. That one's pretty subtle. So I think that that's giving me enough green and enough kind of overlay within my painting for what it is I was trying to achieve and the effect that I was going for. Let's see it without that, and we can see just how smooth that elephant starts to look now, right? So that's giving it that really kind of overgrown, mossy look that I wanted to achieve. And we can also go in on soft light with this. I'm gonna copy this whole little section because I feel like that's a strong area. And let's try distorting. Ooh, I like that. And putting it up in the elephant's ear. And let's go back to soft light. Brush. Let me get on my brush layer. Okay. So we're going to delete some of this out. And now that ear is really starting to hang back. That's really in the shadows back there. So let's try dropping it down just a little bit more, pushing it up. And now we're getting a lot more just subtleness going on within the back shadow. Let's duplicate this layer again. We got a lot more stuff here, and let's try dropping some of it just all the way over the side of the elephant's head. So now it's starting to become a little bit much. So let's delete that stuff out where there it's overlapping. And now we're getting some really good tones. Let's go with a soft light one more time. And where I want to put it now is underneath the elephant's trunk. There we go. So that looks pretty good. And getting my eraser out again. I delete it all up under here. It does look pretty good on the rocks as well. I kind of like it there. So I think I might just leave a little bit of that green. I like the way that's blending in with the light. Let's drop a good amount of it out in here. I don't want too much of it still in there. Still have my brush turned on to an eraser. You have to manually turn it off once you actually do that. So we're going to leave some of those. I'm going to take my opacity down to 50% on that eraser now. And let's just get some of that out of there. I think we've still got some earlier pieces. Yeah. So I'm going to use my brush again. Oops. Don't need the pen tool, hitting brush. And we're just going to drop some of it down in areas where maybe it's not quite as successful. Cool. So that's looking good and funky now, which is what we want to achieve. So the overall tone of it, I like it. It's looking good to me. Let's take that other piece that was working so well over here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to pull that down, scale it down a lot, so we get some little micro details. And let's bring up the opacity just a little bit more. There we go. Cool. Hit the brush again. And then I'm just going to quickly paint some of that moss onto those rocks down there. That looks really good to me. I like it. So we're getting a little bit of the greenery within the shot. Anywhere else that I'd really like to do this? For now, I think that's feeling pretty good. So, well, right? So it's like, how far do you actually take it? Let's get on this one. And I'm going to copy out just a little sliver. There it is. Transform it. And we're going to drop it on the eyebrow right there. Soft light again. And you can see how much that's, come on, messing with my light. I don't want that to happen. Bring my brush, my eraser back up to 50%. And we're going to leave just a little inkling of it right around there. Not too much. I don't want to do that. I want that to stay nice and bright, but giving it just a little bit of the green there. Yeah, I think that's what we needed. So that's all looking pretty good. I think the trunk is really starting to come together, where we've got the greens, the blues, the other colors without those layers that I just created, I'm just going to grab them and let's give them a color. So we'll give them indigo so that you guys can see all the layers that we just put in there. It happens pretty quick. I'm oftentimes hitting the Control Shift V to be able to copy and paste the stuff in, or I'm right clicking and going to duplicate layers within my gray area. And let's see what it looks like without those on there. And you can see how it looks nice, right? It still looks good. It's working, but pushing it a little bit further, I think was the right call. So that's looking a little bit stronger to me. So the last things that I want to do within this painting is when I sort of zoom back on it, right? Yeah, it's working, but I think we can take some of our dark areas and start to add a little bit more darkness to them. So in the same way that the other day you guys saw me in one of the videos start messing with like subtle light things. So I've got these layers right here, these two green layers, one of which is changing my light color underneath so that it becomes just a little bit more um, pushes a little bit more yellow, a little bit out of the cool blues, and pushes forward just a little bit more. The same thing I can do with my shadows as well. So the elephant itself is, I want to work below the elephant. There he is. That's I think my first elephant layer. Yeah, look how good that looks when I turn everything off on him right now. So that starting layer that we had, that blue, we have really gone a long ways from just our base layer, adding some more stuff on top of it. It gets a little bit messy the closer we get, but let's, yeah, for now, mm, that's my elephant highlight. I want to keep all those. I'm going to work, let's try it at first on top of the elephant and see how well we can blend these two things together. So call this shadow pass. So this is going to be going in and trying to figure out where my darkest color is. Right now, I do have black within this painting. Well, this is a really dark teal. I can keep the dark teal on there. I think a dark purple. Um, might work a little bit better. So yeah, that one skews purple. Let's see if we can't get that color into the deepest regions of this painting. So this is going to be the time within the painting that I actually want to use my fuzzy brush. I haven't really touched it up until this point. And my opacity, I'm going to put the opacity down at 50% so I get 2 strokes to be able to build into these areas. Make sure I don't have anything selected. And why can't I see it? Okay, so I'm working on top of my stuff. Oh, because I'm still on clear. That's right. So let's turn it off clear, back to normal. And yeah, man. So what I'm doing here is sort of doing a super dark shadow pass on this thing, just to be able to bring out some of those deep shadows just a little bit further. I can go back if I need to with my burn tool. I'm going to drop this down a little bit further with my burn tool and bring these down, bring them in further, but I want to just create some depth. I feel like there's some areas on this thing where the light really would not get over into that I'm not highlighting or showing off enough, like right around these little bushes. And I can do a little bit more with the overall depth of the piece. So for another example would be right under the elephant's brow here. Come on. Where it's getting a little bit of a highlight and it does not need to, right? There's no reason for it to have that big of a highlight right around the character's eyes. We would not see any light there. Do another little shadow pass right around this section. That's all going to look a little bit better for me. Right around the tusk area, I had originally had the idea that there would be a little bit of a darkness there, like it's sort of receding into the rock, and I feel like I've lost that in a lot of ways. So I'm going to bring that back and just accentuate it just a little bit more so that it feels like it's pushed back inside of there. And yeah, so that's starting to look better on this side. We've still got some stuff in the upper section of the rock over here that I haven't really worked on or done any adjustments to since that very first initial pass. So now that we've made so many other choices and we've got our lighting really kind of pushed and locked in, I'm just trying to balance that out just a little bit more by going in, and let's pretend that the elephant is, its ear is extruding out from the rock. So we want to make that a little bit darker, and we're just sort of giving it a vignette up here at the very top. So those extra little bits should come together to help a lot. I've got another little section down here where the elephant is just starting to meet the rock, and there should not be much light that's penetrating under here at all. A little bit of a blue line sticking out there for some reason. But yeah, deepening that area is going to help. Before we get into our fog of war, the fog layer down here at the bottom, I think there's some more room that can be done right in here, right around here, just to be able to push these layers a little bit more, make them a little bit darker. Same thing goes for some of the bushes in here where the light is not hitting. And darken some of that stuff up. Those last layers, not the biggest fan of them. So let's delete that stuff out and leave it as this sort of middle tone. So that's looking a little bit messy. We'll see if we can figure it out here. Same thing goes if we're going to start applying this to right under here where it starts to meet, and just pushing those shadows just a little bit more where the light's really not going to be able to get or go. We've got this overhang. So I want to show that there's some deep crevices inside of there that the light just is not going to hit. There it is. That's looking good. Okay. Another little deep crevice. Just pull out another one. Got the highlights well defined, but we had not defined gone back and done the shadows on a second pass there. So that should help those out quite a lot. I like the little highlight that we're starting to get inside of there. That's working well for me. Anything else? I guess let's do bold moves, right? I'm gonna go down to 23%, and let's drop the elephant down over on this side. So now we've got a really bright highlight. There we go. And let's take that eraser down to like 31%. And that means I'm going to drop some of those highlights that are over here. They're still important. They're helping, but they're becoming a little bit more distracting than I want them to be. And so now let's go back to the shadow pass. We'll leave that on purple so that we can see the difference for what this is creating within our shot. So when I turn it off, and then turn it back on, you can see what a difference that's making in the overall feel of the painting, right? So we're giving just a little bit more depth to some of those areas over on the right-hand side and making them recede back so that they're deeper instead of becoming so flat. You can see how flat it looks. And by adding that little bit of shadow in there, it's becoming quite a bit deeper, and we're starting to resolve the right hand side of our shot, which if we're going to do it on the right hand side, we need to do it over here on the front as well and get some good deep shadows going on with that. I'm going to start changing out the line color after I finish the front trunk, and we do a pass on the front trunk. So here's the front trunk. Here's all that beautiful moss that we created a second ago and worked so hard on. I don't want to lose that. So let's go over. Nope. Over all the mossy stuff. There's our other, tusk on the right-hand side. I think that's going to do it for the tusk layers. That's working well for me. What I need to do is oops. All right, trying to get above the tusk layers. Call this shadow, and give it a violet color. again. And from here, I want to do the same thing. So I'm on 23% with my brush, and I'm just going to start pushing in some of these shadows and shades. So where the vine is at, just making it a little bit more shaded where it connects. Same thing for some of these other areas. I hadn't really um, taken the time to make them any deeper since we've been working on this thing. So going in, pushing all that quite a bit further back. Let's get it a little bit darker here, right up on the edge. A little bit of shading. And again, since this is on its own layer, and I am working on top of the tusk as well, this gives me the opportunity to be able to do some nice tight, not black, but almost black shading right around this section because I felt like it just didn't have enough contrast in it. Still looking a little sort of middle groundy. All right, so now we've got some good crazy shading going on with the tusk. Let's turn off that shadow layer. You can see how bright it was before, and now we're just starting to let that drop back. And what that is doing within our painting is giving us a better highlight. So by dropping it down, let me do a big bright layer. All right, so I'm still on my fuzzy brush, but by basically shading all of this over here, shade, 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 and by shading this stuff in here, shade, 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 what that allows us to do is have a greater level of contrast visually with where I want you to look. And I want the focus of this piece to be right in this area around that green circle. Now, by shading those two areas, it's creating visual lines or tension that's starting to push the viewer's eye towards where I want them to look. I hope that makes sense to you guys for the reason why I'm doing this. I'm also trying to respect the 70-30 rule by, even though this has got a lot of line work in it right now, I'm going to change the color on that line work in just a second. And some of these, I'm going to try and drop it back so that it's not quite as extreme. I'm creating a resting space for the viewer's eye and up here as well, right? So we've got resting space, resting space, resting space, two areas of tension that I'm trying to pull the viewer's focus between. The orange is the resting space, the shading areas, and then we've got our focus right in the middle. And I believe that the painting is working overall very well towards that direction and what it is that I'm trying to achieve. So let's go in and let's start messing with some of those line art layers now. I'm going to start from the very back now that I've got my colors picked, and I'm just going to double click in the empty gray area, and I'm going to go to color overlay. Let's turn that off of soft light onto normal up to 100%. And we've got a pretty good idea of how our colors are going to work now within this painting. So I'm going to turn those down to a dark teal. That works pretty well for me. So now the line art, it is still there. It's still present, but it's not as shouty as it was a second ago. There's some other cool things that I can do with this. So now we've got a color overlay on the line art back there, which is useful. It's nice. So that's all the line art on this thing. But what if we don't do a color overlay and instead we add a gradient overlay? So I'm going to open this thing up so that you guys can really see what I'm doing here. Down there at we need to reverse it. So, well, let's give it two colors so that we can see it. A red layer and a yellow layer. Oh my gosh, I hate when it does that. Okay, so yeah, need to flip it. We've got the red down at the bottom, and for the red layer, let's change that now to a dark teal. All right, so that's a good dark teal layer. Okay, we're going to push that forward and up. Okay, and then as we get towards the top, let's do a much lighter teal. All right. So now we've got something that's moving from a dark layer to a light layer. So as it moves a little bit lower, let's check that layer again. Color overlay. Let's turn the color overlay to something bright so I can actually tell what's being affected. Okay. And turn the color overlay off. Yeah, there we go. So let's check it one more time. Yeah. So now the line art for all of that is we still got it pretty dark down here, but it's becoming a whole lot visually less intense as we move up to the top. I could turn it on, but I think that that's working pretty good to leave some of those colors out of there and to let it remain soft. Let's look at this stuff right here. So right now we've got a teal line art. Oh, that line art is going all over the elephant's trunk as well. That's no bueno. So let's separate out some of that line art. Sorry, break it apart into two different sections. It's not as important now that we've got everything painted also, so it's not that big of a deal to break it up. Okay. All right. There we go. Line art. So let's do a color overlay here. And now we've just got the red stuff on the trunk. And let's go with our dark purple color. We could do another gradient on it. Let's try that and see what happens. So right now, my gradient on the side, I'm going to change my color to that super dark purple, maybe even go a little bit darker so I don't lose all that line art that I worked so hard on creating. And then as we move forward and closer to the bright area of the painting, okay, so that's not quite going to work, but I think we've got something right around here so that it becomes less intense. There we go. Still not quite as strong. And let's turn that on. Cool. So without the gradient, that's what it looks like. With the gradient, we're just softening some of that line stuff that we created so that it's not quite as much there. Turn it off. You can see the steps. I like it okay. Um, Maybe a little bit darker still. I like the line art that I can see within the steps themselves. Okay, cool. That's it. That's the one that we want. Now, this is a fun one. So we've got all the line art on this thing. So for this guy, he's supposed to get brighter as we move up to the top. So I'm going to do that same trick with a gradient on the line art. And let's go with the line art down at the base. Let's pull something that is much darker. I don't want to lose all those nice leaf layers that I've created, but let's see if we can't get away with doing something really bright up at the top. There we go. So as we get towards the top, let's go even brighter if I can. Yeah. So now all the line art starts to disappear and it just becomes super, super bright. Let's try to turn it off. We are losing some of the elephant's details, but you can see how much brighter all those leaves and everything else become. So let's zoom out even more, test it out. Gradient on, off. I'm gonna go team on. I like it. Okay, and in this section, we've got that quick line art that I created. This is one of the reasons why I want to do this. It's really been bothering me a lot having the that trunk right there be so dark. So let's do the same deal. We're going to turn the color overlay off, gradient on. Color down at the bottom is going to be our super dark color. And as we move up to the top, let's go with something right around here so that it's still dark, but not quite as dark as it was. Flipping the gradient, so our dark part is down at the bottom. That looks good to me. And we also said that we wanted to mess with all the line art that was down here. So right now, should still be turned on to black. Yeah, look at all that stuff, right? That's a lot of line art within that one layer. Let's zoom out and see what kind of impact this is going to have. So I like still being able to see the line art, but it's not entirely necessary. So let's go with the color overlay on the line art layer. Yeah. All right. Color overlay turned on. Hmm. That first color is telling me that we've probably done something right here. Okay, so that's a teal. Let's go with a little lighter teal. So that stuff is really starting to drop out now. And you notice I'm pulling from my shadow section, so I can go a little bit lighter with it. So that's sort of barely there. What about this bright like lime green? No, just sort of experimenting. This is the fun part when we get to the end here. We can start to do this stuff. All right, so I think that's good. It's sort of in the middle. It's accomplishing what I wanted it to. I hit OK, and then we can turn it on and off again. So this is it with it off. We can see how still kind of visually heavy all those leaves are. And when we turn it off, or turn it on, sorry, the leaves drop back even more, right? So the idea now is we've got a lot of stuff in here. Those leaf details are still there. If we zoom in on the painting, we can still see them. But when we let them drop down, it gives us more of that all-important breathing space within our composition. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got another really black line that I haven't messed with yet. We turn on the color overlay, it becomes purple. That's not going to work for me. Let's go with a gradient overlay. Ooh, this is the whole elephant. All right. So over here on the left-hand side, I think we are using a sort of a light teal. That works for me. Okay. And then underneath, again, we want to use our darker color. Okay. And let's hit OK. So now reverse the gradient so that things are dark down at the base, and then they get lighter as we move up to the top. Um, sorry, I'm going to zoom in on this guy. Let me double click that again. And I think there's some room to be able to manipulate it. I'm going to change one of my colors to like a super bright so I can see what's bright and then what's dark. All right, so right now, there it is. The linear is really kind of taking over the entire thing. I'm going to pull this up so it becomes darker. And let's adjust the angle. Aha. So you can see how I'm kind of painting with the light. Painting with the light. So I'd really just rather have it on the left-hand side. There we go. Okay, so that'll work. Let's keep it moving. Okay. Still need it to be a little bit darker than that. There we go. Okay. So the line art is still there. It still exists. Here it is with it turned off. We're losing some of it in certain areas. So if that happens to be the case, maybe I can take my gradient and let's turn down the opacity just a little bit down to like 80% so that we're still sticking some of that line art within the shot. So without this, you can see what a big black line I was getting on there before. Now that stuff's starting to drop back quite a bit. Yeah, it's better. It's not as much visual noise. Our last one to solve for here is the mountains. Yeah, the mountain range. Okay. So this guy, I don't want to do anything too crazy with him. Color overlay. Let's leave those where they're at for the most part. Any other polish that I want to create on this thing? I'm pretty happy with the overall the way the second tusk is breaking through there, the amount of grime that's on this one, the way we were able to introduce all the moss within the painting. The only other thing that I'm seeing is maybe So we got our whole highlight layer. Let's go down, grab this entire thing. And so that's a highlight layer. I should have one more highlight over the top of that. Let's go up one more. So there's all my plant life as well, and then the highlights for the plant life. Let's go with a bright yellow, because just to kind of let me know visually that this is a highlight layer. And what I'm going to do here is again grab my brightest kind of orange yellow that I can. Super sunny. And this will allow me to be able to kind of control the tone. Oops, that's too much. Go to 20, 30%. All right. And so now what this is doing is you turn it off. You can see how dark that little area is right there. That's the part that's bugging me. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. There we go. All right. And let's mess with the layer interpretation. I'm running out of them pretty quick. Okay. Again, I'm watching those two little lines just to the left for the blue sky pops up. I'm trying to get those a little bit lighter. That does what I need for it to do. Yeah, man. Those nice and dark back here. Got a little bit more contrast. Okay, cool. Turn it off. And you can see how that's just sort of brightening up and creating a little bit of a gradient throughout that entire upper section that wasn't there before. Go to the brush. Hmm. I'll always turn this down in a minute. Okay. Turn it off. And that's really brightening everything up right in that section. Start turning a light on and off within my painting. And yeah, we're getting those brighter sections. So they're not as dark. I think 66%. That might be the magic number there for what I'm looking for. Yeah, so it's doing its job. It's quite a bit brighter right up there at the top now. A little bit of that teal going in. Let's turn it off one more time. So maybe a little bit lower, like 45. Still there. Yeah, still there. But now it's still allowing the elephant to push forward even more. And that's what we want to happen. I really like the two little purple eyes and the way that those are showing up within the painting. I think that looks really nice. We've got our line art that's breaking down and pushing back. So it's not quite as shouty and as loud as it was a moment ago. Um, I like that I'm leaving the brush strokes still in the sky. And yeah, this is sort of a 1 hour. Okay, so these dudes, what have you guys been doing? All right. So we got all of these over here and are just sort of hanging out and they're really bright. So it's nice having them over on the left-hand side. I think it gives a good little bit of high texture, but it's not accurate for how the lighting is hitting the rest of the shot. So let's go into the brightness and contrast, and I'm going to turn down the brightness on those so that they're still in there. They still exist, but now they're not nearly as bright. So let's go into brightness contrast, and I'm going to turn that on and then down. So if I look into my navigator, it's there, and now it's still there, but it's not quite as distracting as it was just a moment ago. Okay. Cool. Anything else that I want to do on this painting? I guess there's maybe a little bit more. So I was playing with the idea of texture and thinking of this as being almost like a satin or something that isn't as reflective for where the highlights are at with this thing. But now that we're getting to the very end and I've done the rest of the highlights within this piece, I want to see what it looks like just to be able to add a little bit of sort of extreme. We're in the pinks. Let's go into the oranges right on the edge of these eyeballs. So we use the opacity basically all the way up. And this is just creating like little glints, right? As if the light was touching it. This might be the spot where the only spot really on this piece, this entire piece that I used white. And I'm going to move some of this orange stuff that I'm doing. I'm going to do a few other colors with it as well, just so that it looks more intentional. Really, really subtle and small, but because this is such a bright color and something that I'm not using anywhere else on the canvas or on the piece, just little flakes here and there. I think it'll work for what I'm trying to do with it. Okay, so now we've got just some other little colors that are showing up. Yeah, it's okay. So let's use, got our super bright yellow. Let's go even brighter. That's as bright as going to get here. And within those orange flakes, I know this seems really, that's what I mean by polish and getting like entirely too much into those details. So let's go back here on it just a little bit more. And yeah, man, I think that's what we wanted it to do. So now those eyes are really showing up and really pulling the viewer's attention into them with those little lightning embers that are going on with them. Like they're catching the light, but it's getting refracted on the inside. Maybe it's a composite rock to where there's just a couple other colors that are not quite making it into it. And man, I could sit here and peck at this thing all day long. Um, got that first shadow color. I keep on thinking this trunk has been bothering me since I first put it in here and painted it. So let's go down to like 35%. I'm on a new layer right now, so I'm doing the non-destructive editing again. And I'm pushing back that brightness. So you can see what it looked like before. You can see why it was bothering me, and now it's sort of sitting back in its pocket just a little bit better. Let's use the eraser tool, make it a soft brush. I see at 31. That's exactly what I want. And I'm gonna give it just a little bit of a rim lighting so that it starts to. Yeah. So that's pretty intentional. And let's go in and now that's my color overlay for it. I want to see if I can, maybe there's a layer interpretation that feels more correct. Definitely not black. I'm letting my eyes kind of go out of focus when I do this. Yeah, that might be it. Overlay. Let's turn it on and off. It's definitely needed there. I think soft light, man, is the winner on this entire painting. It's been getting me out of trouble this entire time. So that's all feeling pretty well and good. Let's turn it off, back on, drop the opacity just a little bit more, off and on. There it is. That feels good. And I'm resetting my eyes. Okay, so anything else that I really want to do with this painting? We've got the elephant bridge that's feeling strong. We got a good composition, good depth to the piece, interesting shadow areas, brightness areas. I've really gone in to push them further and make them strong. I had the thought a while ago that I could add a lens flare to this thing. I mean, all the Y2K styling and fashions coming back. Maybe J.J. Abrams will have another go at the box office and be a big deal again. But he used to use lens flares all the time. Um, no, I'm not gonna lens flare it. I can't bring myself to it. It's gonna have to be this way. But yeah, I'm gonna call this painting finished. I like the subtle stuff that's going on in the bottom right hand side with the layered colors, but still getting the idea of the dense jungle. I like the way that the foliage is developed. I like all the texture that I'm building on the stones and on the ruins. I think we're out. I don't think there's anything I want to do. I could probably come back to this in like 2 days and completely hate it. That's usually how it goes. But for now, I think I'm feeling good about this, you guys. So I'm gonna stop. Let me show you how to be able to just again all those little reference images that we had in over there a moment ago. We just get rid of them all. We just crop our canvas here when we're ready to export. Lose all that stuff. Using my trusty crop tool. Oh, there we go. Okay, don't want to lose too many things, so let's zoom out, have a look at it. And last thing I'm going to do here is, wow, we haven't been down here in a very long time, but I'm going to take one of my darkest colors and I'm going to, what was that? Uh, wow, that really made the background, that section of the painting too dark. So let's quietly delete all that and realize it was that see-through. Man, turn it off. I was just trying to fill in that little area, man. Yeah, there's a bunch of little things that just got filled in with that, but okay. Yeah, and that's what the final composition ends up looking like. So, what do I do with myself now? If we were watching this on a TV screen or on a screen, it would look something like this, where we start off down at the bottom, and then the camera slowly pans up do, 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 to our final output. And yeah, I think it's holding up pretty well at this scale, at a screen size. Can always be cleaner, but yeah, man, that's the work that we put in on this thing. I like it. Works for me. I like these little flakes and fun little loose lines of color there. I think there's a good balance between the rough texture and the smooth areas that we were trying to achieve. And yeah, let's call it.